Sukuna has been one of the biggest menaces we've ever seen an antagonist be, and although it's a given that in a shonen the antagonist will lose at some point, we can't seem to fathom just how Sukuna, of all people, will take that L. It's almost as if every time there's a sliver of a chance for him to finally lose, he comes up with another ace up his sleeve. This video is heavy with manga spoilers, so here's your warning. With everything that's going on in Jujutsu Kaisen right now, we can say for sure that Sukuna is stronger than Gojo Satoru unless Gojo pulls off a hidden inventory arc comeback, but he's 100 times more miraculous and gets even more enlightened, which may not be likely because he's literally in two very separate pieces right now. And it's not just Sukuna's cursed technique, the nature of which is still a mystery by the way, that makes him so strong. It's his anatomy, how he manipulates his life events and the people around him to upgrade this anatomy that have made him the calamity that he is. If you're here for a deeper understanding of Sukuna, his anatomy, and his strength, you're in the right place. Who is Sukuna? Why is he the strongest? Sukuna, formerly known as Ryomen Sukuna, is a Jujutsu sorcerer who shook the world of Jujutsu 1,000 years ago during the Heian era. He used to be a Jujutsu sorcerer who gained infamy due to his taste for committing mass murder and annihilating anyone who stood in his way. In this golden age of sorcery, Sukuna had risen as the strongest curse user and went on to be considered the undisputed king of curses. Reserves of cursed energy far above anyone else's, lethal techniques, and an absolute understanding and mastery over cursed energy helped him reach the pinnacle of sorcery. His position as the strongest remained unchallenged, even after he ceased to exist as a sorcerer until the birth of Gojo Satoru. Throughout the show, Sukuna is referred to as a demon, a curse, a monster, and other malevolent entities, but almost never as a sorcerer. This is probably due to his malevolent and downright evil nature, similar to how people in the real world often refer to vile human beings as monsters or demons. He was the one who didn't hesitate before killing women and children, and instead reveled in the act. At some point, he annihilated the northern Fujiwara clan's 5 empty generals and the Sun, Moon, and Stars squad. Following this, he was invited to the capital during the Harvest Festival so as to be worshipped as an idol. This era was known as the Golden Age of Sorcery for a reason, since Jujutsu was at its peak, with several sorcerers being exceptional. Many of them would battle Sukuna just for the sake of sharpening their skills. Despite everything, Sukuna was always, pun intended, a cut above the rest. Why does Sukuna look like a cursed spirit if he's a human? Keeping the heinous things Sukuna did as the irrefutable strongest and what the people thought of him aside, Sukuna himself took great pleasure in being invincible and was not the type to let go of his reign of terror. However, his being a sorcerer meant that he was human, which came with mortality irrespective of strength. Sukuna was alleviated of this issue when Kenjaku came to his aid, offering to help him live on even after his death. A story was then concocted. Future generations of Jujutsu sorcerers went on to learn that, following a grueling battle, the Jujutsu sorcerers of the Heian era were able to defeat Sukuna at long last. However, he couldn't be killed, so his soul was split into his 20 fingers, all of which were sealed and dispersed across Japan. These fingers were modified into cursed objects for the ordeal to work out. Before the events of Jujutsu Kaisen kicked off, Sukuna's fingers were often sealed and kept hidden in areas that were prone to curses. Classified as a special grade, Sukuna's cursed fingers kept other curses at bay. Because schools and hospitals were considered hotspots for cursed energy, one of Sukuna's fingers was located in Yuji Itadori's school. In reality, however, Sukuna was never defeated. He had cut down on any opposition wherever it dared to challenge him. Kenjaku had the ability to make binding vows with sorcerers for the sake of transforming their remains into cursed objects. He allegedly made a binding vow with Sukuna 1,000 years ago to prevent him from dying, which led to the modern era situation. There's a contradiction here though. The binding vows preserve the remains of the sorcerer in exchange for not doing any damage, and yet Sukuna's fingers continued to grow stronger and stronger, and despite its special grade classification, it was always way ahead of every other special grade curse. What we've never seen, however, is how Sukuna used to look back on his heydays. At this point, we know that he has 2 mouths and 4 arms, which is the form he's currently operating in. This physical form is completely possible for a cursed spirit, but not for a Jujutsu sorcerer, who are simply humans with cursed energy. We are yet to see a canonical explanation for this phenomenon, but of course, fans have a popular theory that explains Sukuna's form. It's believed that Sukuna used to be a conjoined twin, but at some point, he consumed his own brother. This led to him acquiring a another set of arms, another pair of eyes, and 2 mouths. The reason why this theory holds so much weight is due to the legend of Ryomen Sukuna in Japanese mythology. Gege Akutami has stated that he has taken inspiration for his antagonistic character from the Sukuna in Japanese mythology. There's an ancient classical Japanese book called Nihon Shoki, or the Chronicles of Japan, which recounts the tales of Sukuna. He was a powerful being and a renowned leader who possessed 2 arms and 2 legs, one pair at the front of the body and the other at the back. During his reign, he terrorized the people of the country, pillaging their villages and causing immense death and destruction, so much so that he was feared as a natural calamity. Sukuna was an enemy of the emperor, or the tyrannical Japanese government of the past. For this reason, he was also worshipped as a minor deity, because the existence of a tyrannical empire had obviously led to several common people resenting him and his policies. Those people treated him like a hero. The name Ryomen Sukuna also translates to two-faced spirit. This highlights the similarities between the 2 Sukunas in behavior as well as design. Akutami's Sukuna does not possess a second pair of legs, and if he does, we haven't seen it yet. The absence of the second pair of legs can also contribute to refuting the fan theory. However, the theory specifically suggests Sukuna having a conjoined twin who may never have had legs in the first place. There's also the situation with Maki and Mai's Zenin, which adds more to this. In the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, twin siblings are considered singular and also an omen of ill fortune. In fact, twins were considered to be bad luck in Japan and to some extent across East Asia in the past. Although a superstition, Jujutsu Kaisen breathed physical life into the myth, with Maki being born with no cursed energy or technique, while Mai possessed minimal cursed energy. Because the pair were considered to be one, Mai had the cursed energy on behalf of Maki, while Maki had superhuman physical attributes due to her heavenly restrictions. It's not until Mai dies that Maki's cursed energy drops to 0, much like Toji Fushiguro, and makes her ridiculously strong. Sukuna eating his twin and thereby killing him may have contributed to Sukuna's strength increasing tremendously. While his brother may be dead, he was metaphorically still alive and a part of him after being consumed, and acquiring strength followed by consumption is a common trope in shonen anime. Yuji gains Sukuna powers after eating his finger. Subjects of Ymir gain the power of the Titan Shifters after eating the previous wielder. Deku gains One for All after eating All Might's hair. One Piece characters eat devil fruits to gain their powers, and so on and so forth. It wouldn't be too far-fetched to attribute Sukuna's form and unrivaled power to the consumption of his conjoined twin. This would also explain why his cursed energy reserves are so ridiculously high. Other sorcerers with insane levels of cursed energy are Gojo and Yuta, thanks to their being descendants of one of Japan's 3 vengeful cursed spirits. Gojo's case is special, with his 6 eyes and Limitless reducing his cursed energy usage to almost 0. But Yuta has also been revered as someone with reserves rivaling, if not outmatching, Gojo's. And yet, with Yuta and Sukuna currently fighting within Yuta's domain, an exhausted Sukuna refers to his current reserves following the fight with Gojo as being on par with Yuta's in a negative way. It puts him in a position where he cannot use his domain. The idea that Sukuna might possess the cursed energy of 2 people helps explain his unnaturally large reserves, which dwarf those possessed by the descendants of a vengeful cursed spirit. How did Sukuna come back to life? Why did he need to change his vessel to Fushiguro? In episode 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen, we see Megumi on the lookout for the special grade cursed object in Yuji's school. This object is Sukuna's finger, which has been retrieved by the Occult Research Club, of which Yuji is a part. The seal on Sukuna's finger also is weakened over the millennium, and 2 of the 3 members end up unraveling it in Yuji's absence, who was on the way to school with Megumi. Although Sukuna didn't instantly appear after the finger was unsealed, his cursed energy ended up attracting cursed spirits, who had to be defeated by Megumi. At this point, Yuji had nothing to do with the world of Jujutsu, but due to his insane physical stats, he lent a helping hand to Megumi in battle and managed to get a hold of the finger while a powerful cursed spirit was trying to acquire it. To prevent that from happening, Yuji threw the finger up in the air and consumed it, allowing Sukuna to manifest in Yuji's body 1,000 years after his soul was split into 20. This event took place in June 2018. What was unnatural here was that not only did Yuji not die after he ate the finger, but he was even able to keep Sukuna suppressed without much effort, maintaining control over his body around 99% of the time. Because Sukuna was back, the higher-ups of the Jujutsu world wanted Yuji to be killed. Gojo, on the other hand, desired to change the world of Jujutsu by uplifting the next generation. He wanted someone who could surpass him, and after Yuta and Megumi, he found his new hope in Yuji. To delay his execution, he proposed to the higher-ups that finding someone who could become a vessel for Sukuna was unnatural. So, if Yuji was made to consume all 20 fingers and then killed, Sukuna would die as well. And this was the best course of action to eliminate the King of Curses, because his fingers could not be exercised. However, Yuji was able to host Sukuna without dying, and even retained control due to his unique anatomy, as he was later revealed to be somewhat inhuman due to his lineage. With Kenjaku being able to swap his brain from body to body, he continued to remain alive for 1,000 years. During the Meiji period, he took over Noritoshi Kamo from the Kamo clan and impregnated a woman whose specific genetic component allowed her to give birth to half-human, half-curse offspring. As Kamo, Kenjaku impregnated her 9 times, and then made her have an abortion, storing the embryos as cursed death paintings. At some point, Tokyo Jujutsu High procured all 9 death paintings, but they were stolen by Mahito during the Tokyo Goodwill event. Following this, Mahito and Kenjaku granted them flesh and blood, giving rise to Kichizu, Eso, and Choso. The death paintings had been Kenjaku's DNA while he was in Noritoshi Kamo's body. Due to sharing the same parents, not only were they siblings, but the blood manipulation technique of the Kamo clan manifested in Choso. Kenjaku continued to hop from one body to another and, at some point, possessed Yuji's mother, Kaori, who was a sorcerer. Unlike the first 9 death paintings, however, Yuji was conceived organically and birthed organically, which kind of made him the perfected version of a cursed womb death painting, with Kenjaku trying to experiment with minds and bodies in his hopes of creating a world where everyone can use cursed energy. Yuji became the result of one of his many experiments. He did mention giving certain people he had marked the strength of vessels, while some others acquired cursed techniques, with Yuji falling into the first category. This means that Kenjaku intentionally created Yuji to be able to host a sorcerer. However, Yuji was less of a vessel for Sukuna and more of a cage, unlike Hana and Angel, who had a symbiotic relationship. What Sukuna needed was a body that could host him, but not control him, which is why he had his sights set on Megumi. As a descendant of the Zenin with the 10 Shadows technique, not only could Megumi be a vessel, but Sukuna would also get access to Ma-Oraga and Megumi's curse technique as a whole. The battle with Gojo in the second episode, which Sukuna lost in a humiliating fashion due to his lack of control over Yuji's body, as well as having only 5% of his power, led to him realizing that Gojo's infinity was going to be an issue in battle, and Sukuna had made up his mind that the first person he would kill after he acquired all his fingers would be Gojo. With this, Sukuna began to lay the foundation for him to change bodies from Yuji to Megumi. When he took over Yuji's body temporarily again and fought Megumi, Sukuna took out Yuji's heart, killing him. He then negotiated with Yuji and made a binding vow with 2 conditions. Sukuna would heal Yuji with his reverse curse technique, but when Sukuna would use the word enchain, Yuji would pass the control to him for a whole minute. The second condition was that Yuji would forget the contents of the binding vow. On the other end, Yuji negotiated that during this 1 minute, Sukuna would not be able to hurt others. This reached its climax during the Culling Games arc, where Megumi's sister, Sumiki, was finally out of her coma and revealed to be the vessel for an ancient sorcerer named Yorozu. This broke Megumi's will to a great extent. Soon after, Sukuna chants the word enchain, passing control over Yuji's body to himself for a whole minute. Meanwhile, both Hana and Yorozu want to kill Sukuna. He first knocks Hana unconscious, but also holds her body, preventing it from falling to the ground due to the conditions of his binding vow where he cannot hurt others. Whenever a sorcerer manifests within a vessel, such as Kenjaku within Noritoshi Kamo and Kaori, the sorcerer gains access to everything within the vessel's mind and body due to the 2 now sharing the same anatomy. This is why and how Kenjaku had complete knowledge and understanding of Geto's life, motives, and interpersonal relationships, and his curse techniques. This is also why Sukuna needs Megumi to get stronger, because that will give him access to a stronger 10 Shadows technique when he takes over Megumi. Similarly, within Yuji, Sukuna had full access to everything within Yuji, which gave him a complete understanding of what Yuji was like as a person. When it comes to philosophy, Jujutsu Kaisen takes a stand that contrasts that of most shonen, which revolve around cooperation, togetherness, and more often than not, the power of friendship. Jujutsu Kaisen, however, has always preached individualism, with Gojo chiding Megumi for always being willing to take the fall to let others succeed, unlike Gojo himself. Sukuna knows that Itadori is the type of guy who will do anything to protect others, precisely due to his wish to ensure a proper death for people and use his strength to protect them, as his grandfather had asked. Sukuna had exploited this trait while making his binding vow with Yuji, creating a situation where Sukuna could not hurt others, but at the same time could hurt Yuji's body. After catching Hana from falling, Sukuna transfers and concentrates his cursed energy into a singular finger and rips it off Yuji's body. Megumi makes the hand sign to summon Mahoraga, but Sukuna catches him, chokes him, and force feeds him that finger, transferring his consciousness from Yuji's body to Megumi's. In this form, he gains access to Megumi's 10 Shadows technique and Megumi's mental framework. This lets him have Megumi's experience with his own technique and allows him to possess Megumi's memories. Despite that, Sukuna claims to be able to only use 90% of his power in his new body due to Megumi's influence on his cursed energy. Following this, Sukuna takes something akin to a bath that has been set up for him by Kenjaku and Urame, with the latter having been a direct subordinate of Sukuna's 1,000 years ago. The ritual is a tradition that's been used for transforming vessels since ancient times. These vessels, which are held in high regard as family heirlooms, are supposed to become cursed tools that are protected from outsiders. Megumi is technically regarded as the outsider in this case, although it is his body. However, the purpose of the bath is to weaken Megumi's hold as the vessel for Sukuna. In the bath, Sukuna is submerged in cursed spirits and other evils to make Megumi's sense of self, or rather the soul, sink deeper into the darkness, allowing the vessel to get closer to evil. This will prevent Megumi from cutting off Sukuna's output of cursed energy. However, the ritual proves to be slightly inadequate, pushing Sukuna to go the extra mile. He seeks out Sumiki Fushiguro, Megumi's sister who's under the control of Yorozu, and kills her. Because Sumiki was the person Megumi had always valued the most, making major life decisions such as allowing Gojo to be his guardian, her death broke him from within, especially because it was his body that did it. In fact, Sukuna used Megumi's curse technique to kill Sumiki, which makes his soul sink even deeper to the point that he loses his will to live. In the end, Sukuna's control over Megumi's body is finally as good as he needs it to be. Apart from Megumi having the treasured technique of the Zenin clan and the necessary body to act as Sukuna's vessel, it is Mahoraga's ability to adapt that Sukuna truly needs in his fight against Gojo. With Dismantle and Cleave, Sukuna can cut anything, but Gojo is protected by Infinity. Had Infinity been an invincible but tangible defense, Sukuna would have managed to bypass it, but Infinity is a distortion of space and the neutral state of limitlessness. When an attack gets close to Gojo, Infinity slows it down to the point that it never reaches him. However, Mahoraga's ability is to adapt to any phenomenon. Once it takes a hit, the wheel on its head turns and allows it to adapt. This means that with Mahoraga, Sukuna will be able to cut through space and land hits on Gojo. Why was Sukuna always going to win against Gojo? Back when Yuji had asked Gojo whether a 20-finger Sukuna would be able to defeat him, Gojo had confidently mentioned that he could win. Although this moment has been clowned by many, now that Gojo's torso has been sliced off, Gojo made this statement without counting Mahoraga in the equation. He believed that he would fight Sukuna 1v1. The strongest sorcerer in history engaged in a long-awaited battle with the strongest sorcerer of the present in Shinjuku on December 24th. The battle kicks off with Gojo using a 200% powered Hollow Purple, which lands a heavy blow on the King of Curses. Of course, he can heal himself using the Reverse Curse technique, which leads to a continued clash between the domains of Unlimited Void and Malevolent Shrine. Both sorcerers show absolute mastery over Jujutsu, switching from domain amplifications to simple domains to be able to fight one another. They alter the ranges of their domains, often strengthening the barrier outside for protection while sacrificing the sure hits that are guaranteed within the domain, or vice versa. Both sides are even shown contracting their domains to increase their cursed energy outputs, and with Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine being a domain that manifests outwards, he's shown controlling its range. However, the difference lies in the fact that while Gojo fights using red and blue, Sukuna never really uses his curse technique. For the longest time, he hasn't even used the 10 Shadows technique, which makes Gojo suspicious. With Gojo holding the upper hand in the domain battles, especially with Sukuna getting hit by Unlimited Void for 0.01 seconds, he finally heads in for the kill. Unfortunately for him, that's when Sukuna summons Mahoraga, who is adapted to Gojo's techniques due to Sukuna getting hit by them. This is what allows Mahoraga to survive Gojo's red because Sukuna has burdened Megumi's soul to make Mahoraga adapt to Limitless and Infinity. To counter this, Gojo has to use domain amplification, which will prevent Mahoraga from adapting to Gojo, and he ends up landing a black flash on Sukuna. It makes Mahoraga's wheel fall off, but it still spins, allowing it to slash at Gojo's chest. When Gojo tries to hit Sukuna with a fully charged red, Sukuna makes him miss using Megumi's Rabbit Escape. With Mahoraga having learned to pierce through Gojo's Infinity, Sukuna finally starts to use the 10 Shadows technique as he uses Fusion Beast Agito, which combines the Shikigamis Round Deer, Nue, Morning Tiger, and Great Serpent, making the battle a 3v1. The reason why Sukuna's win is guaranteed is simple. Even when Gojo told Yuji that he would win, he mentioned that the fight would be one of high difficulty. The gap in strength between a fully powered Sukuna and a fully powered Gojo was very marginal. It wouldn't have been impossible for either side to be stronger, as slightly as they might have been. But with Mahoraga, with its broken ability to adapt and counter Infinity and Agito in the mix, the odds became stacked against Gojo's favor. Not long after, Gojo successfully takes out Agito as well as Mahoraga, and a clash between him and Sukuna leads to Sukuna losing one of his hands. But that doesn't change the fact that through Mahoraga, Sukuna has managed to counter Infinity and can cut through space. Throughout everything, Sukuna's true curse technique is never revealed. It has popularly been known that his technique is dismantle and cleave, but in Shibuya, and also within his domain itself, we have seen Sukuna using fire. When he had caught the special grade fearsome womb in his domain, he slashed it into 5 pieces and then burned it. Against Jogo, Sukuna chanted open and gained access to firepower. He manipulated the fire to create a crossbow and killed Jogo with it, using Jogo's specialty to defeat him. When Jogo witnessed Sukuna using fire, he exclaimed how he believed Sukuna's technique to be slashing, and Sukuna implied how it made sense for curses to not know the true nature of his technique. This makes it evident that Sukuna's real technique has never been dismantle and cleave after all. The slashing and cutting can just be a form of condensing cursed energy to make it act like a blade, similar to how Gojo can wring and crush a can or blast Hanami by manipulating his cursed energy. It's a powerful ability either way, but doing so isn't exactly Gojo's technique, but rather an extension of it. Interestingly, Sukuna's technique is more akin to cooking and, more than that, alchemy. The act requires cutting and chopping ingredients, which is where Sukuna's slashing comes in. Fire is necessary to cook or brew. There have been instances where Sukuna's malevolent shrine, which is known as Fukuma Mizushi in Japanese, has been translated into malevolent kitchen. The translation has been laughed at, but maybe it was never so funny after all. But the reason why there's more basis for alchemy than cooking is due to Sukuna being resistant to poisons. According to the rules of Jujutsu, revealing one's technique to the opponent increases its potency, kind of like taking a buff after disadvantaging oneself, a trade-off of sorts. However, Sukuna knows that Gojo is strong enough to fight him, counter him, and maybe even defeat him with the buff because, like Sukuna, Gojo has complete mastery over his cursed energy and technique, and he has complete knowledge of Jujutsu in general. So, for Sukuna to strengthen his technique by revealing it, it puts him at a disadvantage. He never reveals his technique against any other opponent prior to Gojo during the events of the story, because that could put Gojo in a situation where he knows about Sukuna's technique without Sukuna having told him, taking away the buff of increasing its potency via the binding vow of the trade-off. Meanwhile, he takes a similar advantage for himself, using his vessels and Mahoraga to gain a complete understanding of Gojo's abilities. This brings us back to Dismantle and Cleave, with both attacks being able to slash through different things. While Dismantle slashes through inanimate objects such as buildings, fire, and the like, Cleave slashes through animate objects. Cleave requires Sukuna to adjust to his opponent's cursed energy and target if he wants to cut them down in one go. When activated outside the domain, Sukuna must make physical contact with his target. Dismantle does not have any such conditions, making it simpler. Against Gojo and outside Malevolent Shrine, Cleave also possesses a threat because Sukuna has taken a lot of damage, and he's weakened as a result of the grueling battle. In the worst case scenario, Sukuna may not be able to outdo Gojo's cursed energy to cut through him due to Limitless and Six Eyes, making Gojo's cursed energy usage almost negligible. Now that both sides cannot use their domains for a while, Sukuna also needs time to make physical contact with Gojo for Cleave. While that part isn't impossible at all, meeting both requirements at the same time, to the point that Gojo has been slashed beyond regeneration and one-shotted, is very complicated. This is where Mahoraga's contribution, with its adaptability in Sukuna's Dismantle, comes in. Thanks to Mahoraga, Sukuna can now cut through space, which is inanimate. Using Dismantle, Sukuna pulls off the extremely difficult world-cutting slash, which separates Gojo's upper body from his lower body, killing him. This has been made possible not because Sukuna has cut through Gojo, but because he has cut through the space around him, and, in this case, the entire world. Gojo is just collateral damage. This is similar to how a black hole works, in the sense that if you find yourself near one, which is not possible, but bear with me here, it will suck out the space around you. Its goal is to suck out that space in particular, but because you exist within that space, you get sucked out as well. Similarly, Sukuna has cut through infinity and the space around Gojo with the world slash, and because Gojo is in that space, Gojo has been cut through as well. In conclusion, Sukuna had a well-cooked, long drawn-out plan to defeat Gojo. To meet this end, he had used his personal experience, his abilities, his knowledge of human behavior, his knowledge of cursed energy, curses, and Jujutsu as a whole, and his knowledge of physics to win. On the other hand, Gojo used his personal experiences and knowledge with respect to himself and his abilities in the final battle. With both sides being so close in power, Sukuna pulling off a 3v1 and adapting to Mahoraga as well as Megami's ability as a whole with his planning was bound to give him the win, as difficult as it may have been. Is Sukuna stronger than he was back in the Heian era? There are arguments both for and against this statement. For starters, Versus Gojo was the battle where we witnessed a 20-finger Sukuna in action against the strongest sorcerer of the modern day, leading to a historic battle in the world of Jujutsu. However, Sukuna wasn't in his true four-armed form during this battle. He entered this form after Kishimo engaged him following Gojo's death, which the former referred to as utterly immaculate. This implies that Sukuna, in the Heian era, has often operated in this true form of his, which is a big upgrade from his two-armed form. Having access to 2 extra arms is a massive boost for a sorcerer due to hand signs as well as incantations being extremely important in Jujutsu. With either of the two requiring both arms to perform, having 4 arms allows a sorcerer to use hand signs and chant incantations at the same time. Both hand signs and incantations increase the potency of techniques and sorcery, so it's only with these 4 arms that one can do the impossible and attain maximum efficiency. This allows Sukuna to use each of his attacks at its highest possible potency. It also allows him to launch techniques while engaging in hand-to-hand combat. He can also wield cursed tools with his extra arms. On the flip side, however, the Sukuna of the Heian era could not cut through space and did not possess the World Slash. Previously in the story, Gojo had mentioned that his fingers grew in power the longer they were around, so it is possible for modern-day Sukuna to always have been better than his Heian era version. His curse bath ritual, possession of Mahoraga while in Megumi's body, and acquiring the memories of his vessel gave him a huge amp as well, with or without 4 arms. Either way, now that he has realized his true form once again, and has all the amps he's acquired in the modern era, Sukuna has definitely outdone himself, and with that, today's video comes to an end. Do you think Sukuna has gotten stronger? How far do you think he's gonna go? And did you enjoy today's video? If so, don't forget to like and comment your thoughts down below. And until next time, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.